So I don't know if you know my brother Eric Griego, but every time I asked him, do you have any ideas who could be part of our banquet? He kept saying, Michelle Otero, every single time. I'm like, really? You don't know anybody else but her? And I said, I'm going to work on getting her, but you don't know anybody else? And he's like, Michelle Otero. So that's great. So, and then I went to her website and I was delighted. It just seems serendipitous because she runs an Artesana Creative Consulting, LLC, and that means art heals is the meaning of that. Michelle is the author of Malinche's Daughter, an essay collection based on her work with women survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Oaxaca, thank you, I knew that at one time, Mexico, as a Fulbright Fellow, and Bosque Poems, that the book was published by University of New Mexico Press in 2021, a collection written during her tenure as an Albuquerque Poet Laureate. Her memoir, Vessels, is forthcoming from Flower Song Press. She is a member of the Makanda Women's Workshop. Michelle is a professional coach, certified through Leadership That Works, coaching for transformation. Originally from Deming, New Mexico, Michelle holds a BA in history from Harvard University and an MFA in creative writing from Vermont College. And I like to, it's my privilege and honor to bring her to the stage. She's going to do some readings for us in her poetry.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for that warm welcome, Regina, and thank you all for sticking around indoors on such a beautiful day. So, for this talk, I'll do a little bit of speaking and a little bit of reading, and along the way, some of our guides during this conversation will be Coyoshauqui, the Aztec or Mexica moon goddess, and the figure of the curandera or the healer. And along the way, you'll also hear from my grandparents, a bad boyfriend, and Toni Morrison. The creators behind the Jade Oracle, a card deck based on deities and symbols of ancient Mexico, write that Coyoshauqui appears in your life when you feel broken into pieces. This was true for me. The year was 2004. I had left a bad relationship with a bad boyfriend and returned to my parents' house in Deming, New Mexico. 2 days after I arrived, my maternal grandmother, who was and remains the strongest person I know, living or dead, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And 2.5 months later, she died of complications from pneumonia and acute respiratory distress syndrome. Callous, after. I pick dead skin off my toes and pile it on the tan comforter of my grandma's bed. Most nights she slept here, sometimes in the back room with my grandpa, but his restless thrashing would keep her awake. She kept her underwear and nightgowns in the pine dresser I can almost touch from the bed. My grandpa says Mexican families mourn 40 days and 40 nights, but I think he's making that up, confusing Lent with lamentation. Maybe we are not to leave the house and re-enter life. Maybe we throw in every rite and ritual we know, drape the mirrors with black cloth, fast from sunrise to sunset, walk barefoot on sharp stones, and bury the bed sheets of the dead. Gunfights play from Grandpa's bedroom television. These are his nights since she died a week ago. My grandpa doesn't sleep when he should. Instead, it's one continuous Western. Gunsmoke, good guys fighting bad and never losing their white hats. Bonanza, Ben Cartwright, widowed 3 times, his boys losing their loves to a faster draw or death. The rest of the family has gone back to the places they live. So my parents, who live a 5-minute drive past dirt lots of trailer homes and mesquite bushes, and I take turns sleeping over in this house where my mom was raised. This house that has evolved from cinder block and 1 bedroom to drywall and stucco, 2 bedrooms, extra bath, and room for guests. My mom says Grandpa is not my responsibility, but I have nowhere else to go. When I left El Paso, left bad boyfriend and the arroyo between his house and my apartment, and came to Deming, my grandma was well. Grandpa leaves the house only to visit his heart doctor and the cemetery. I think he secretly fears she will return while he is out, and not finding him home, she will disappear forever. We all thought he would die first, the sick one, the weak one, the consentido. But even before the cancer, she knew he would outlast her. Your grandpa's gonna live forever, she once told me. That man doesn't have a care in the world. There was a time when our people died in their homes. The family kept the body and prayed over it for 9 days. Our novena is almost over, and we've recited no prayers, save the rosary the night before she was cremated. Our obligations pile up like the newspapers by the front door, the unthanked sympathy cards on her table, the medication in Grandpa's pillbox, this mound of skin, and beneath it all, with the clutter cleared, the rough exterior removed, perhaps life is new again, soft to the touch and more beautiful than we could ever imagine. But we didn't ask for new life. Nobody does. Being here in my grandmother's bed in Deming feels like penance without confession. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I resent the sufferings of men, their incapacities, bad boyfriend to love, grandpa to live. Someone will always take care of them. And who will care for us, the women? I lie alone in my grandmother's bed, a mound of dead skin on her comforter, TV gunshots muffled through the walls. My grandmother is ash, bad boyfriend dust. My grandfather, a ghost who can no longer see his reflection. The me that was waits for what comes next, to be scattered like ash or reshaped and held together with spit and desert dirt. And I realize I need to update my bio, so the memoir is out. That's what I'm reading from. Fortunately, during that time, before my grandmother was diagnosed, I had applied for a Fulbright Fellowship to teach Writing to Heal workshops for women in Oaxaca, Mexico. The me who was picking dead skin off of her toes that night in her grandmother's bed in Deming could not have imagined this for herself. And yet, less than a year later, I would find myself creating circles of women storytellers in Oaxaca. As the women in these workshops shared their stories, both on and off the page, I found myself longing for a time and place when men did not hurt women. I saw the violence of conquest in Diego Rivera's murals at the Palacio Nacional in Mexico City. And so I looked to an earlier time, to the goddesses of pre-Columbian Mexico. There's Coatlicue, who wears a skirt of snakes and a necklace of human hands, hearts, and a skull. There's Tlazolteotl, who eats humanity's filth and is the patron saint of midwives and adulterers. And then there's Coyolxauhqui, the moon goddess. The moon goddess, I thought, how lovely. And I pictured her with soft flowing hair, white light emanating from her skin, perhaps with her skirts flowing down like a river. However, our Coyolxauhqui has kind of rougher edges than those images. She has a number of origin stories, but what most of them have in common is that her brother or son, Huitzilopochtli, who was the war god, cut off her head and tossed it into the sky. And this is how she became the moon. Variations on the death of Coyolxauhqui. As Coatlicue, Coyolxauhqui's mother and the 400 Senson Huitznawa cleaned the shrine atop Snake Mountain, a ball of feathers descended from the sky. She tucked the feathers in her belt and became impregnated. Infuriated by their mother's pregnancy, Coyolxauhqui and her Huitznawa brothers set out to kill her. I have 4 brothers. The last came when I was 10 years old and the baby of the family, the only girl. My parents divorced when he was an infant. They remarried each other when he was 4. One brother warned Huitzilopochtli, the child in Coatlicua's womb, of the impending attack. Huitzilopochtli sprang from his mother fully grown and armed with a ray of sun. He butchered his brothers and cast them into the southern sky where they became the stars. He dismembered Coyolxauhqui and cut off her head. He tossed her limb and torso to the foot of Otero and cast her head into the sky where she became the moon. How does suffering yield such light? She is carved into a circular stone, her limbs jagged, bones exposed. How does a woman fit in a stone? How does a woman fit in a circle? What is my frame? How do I twist, turn, bend, break my body to fit? How does suffering yield such light? What is your frame? How do you twist, turn, bend, break your own body to fit? I've been a contortionist, staying silent when I should have spoken up, freezing when I should have stepped forward, putting my physical well-being at risk for the sake of expediency or someone else's convenience. Through my writing, my yoga and meditation practices, and my work as a racial equity and healing practitioner, I've deepened my courage and expanded my capacity to sit in discomfort, to say the hard thing. Just ask my brothers. One of them said, he's not the person I come to when he wants to be treated with kid gloves. I think of writing as fulfilling what Gloria Anzaldúa called the Coyolxauhqui imperative. This world breaks us. Our work is to put ourselves back together, to remember. As Anzaldúa wrote, the Coyolxauhqui imperative is to heal and achieve integration. It is an ongoing process of making and unmaking. This imperative became the frame for my own book, my own process of putting myself back together. We are all Coyolxauhqui, we who defend our home, we who say the hard thing, we who warn, we who won't be taken, we who disagree, who see, who speak the truth. How do we put ourselves back together? It is in putting ourselves back together that we model for those around us how to do the same, that we put families, neighborhoods, cities and towns, whole communities back together. And if there was ever a time we are in desperate need of wholeness and healing, isn't it now? As I put the finishing touches on this talk, Israel has resumed strikes in Gaza and southern Lebanon. Federal lawmakers are calling for the impeachment of judges who disagree with their agenda. And word of a mass shooting in Las Cruces is making national news. Many of us are familiar with the following Toni Morrison quote. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I remember seeing this quote on many social media pages after the 2016 presidential election, again in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, and again in the last few months since the last presidential election and inauguration. Of course, these words would come from the prolific and courageous Toni Morrison. Of course, she would not cower. The same person who gave us Beloved would not shrink in the face of anything so difficult. But it was actually a dear artist friend who gave these words to Toni Morrison. It was the day after Christmas 2004, and Morrison was reeling from the re-election of George W. Bush. I just want to let that sink in for a moment. The friend asked Toni Morrison, "How are you?" And she responded, "Not well. Not only am I depressed, I can't seem to work, to write. It's as though I'm paralyzed." But before she could continue, the friend interrupted, "No, no, no. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. Not when everything is fine, but in times of dread. That's our job. Morrison continues in her own words, I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art. But how? But how? And this is where we turn to the curandera, or the healer. Alicia Gaspar de Alba writes, the Chicana writer, like the curandera, or the bruja, is the keeper of the culture, keeper of memories, the rituals, the stories, the superstitions, the language, the imagery of her Mexican heritage. She is also the one who changes the culture, the one who breeds a new language. And so at a time of fake news, and remember the phrase, you're either with us or you're against us, or alternative facts, our work as writers, as people who work with language and words is more important than ever. When I spoke of the broken woman earlier, I always imagined that as a metaphor. And in June, I had the opportunity to experience that in a very real way. I broke my ankle while I was visiting Oaxaca. Nothing heroic, I wasn't saving children from a burning building, I was walking. And my sandal got caught in the street. I'm sure a hand reached up and held on to my foot, and the rest of me turned around. And when I hit the ground, I realized I'm different now. A fracture isn't it's not an amputated limb, it's not a death sentence, and yet, when I found myself on that familiar street, my favorite street in Oaxaca, with my foot at a very odd angle, I knew this has changed me. I also realized in that moment that though I speak Spanish, and I wear huipiles, and I spend a lot of time in Oaxaca, I'm not Mexican. I didn't know who to call, and fortunately, an angel appeared. Her name was Frida, speaking of brokenness. Her name was Frida, and she sent me to the right place, to a private hospital where I received the best care I've ever received in my life. And 10 days later, for good measure, as I was healing from my first broken bone, I slipped and fell and broke a bone in my other foot. Yeah. It was like that. So I spent a lot of time over the summer healing, convalescing, really appreciating the Olympics, and the time that took, also appreciating all the care in my community. And I thought about that Toni Morrison quote. I thought about healing. I thought about this is precisely the time when artists and writers go to work. And I developed I wrote a short essay called Fracture, in which I anagrammed the word fracture to find many other different words. And I'd like to share a bit of that with you today. Fracture, far from home. Speaking a language is a kind of home. A circle of friends is a kind of home. Memories of Christmas and birthdays and Dia de los Muertos and Sunday afternoon in the Zócalo is a home. Home is a favorite cobblestone callejon that holds memories of a younger me riding the back of a motorcycle and learning to line my lips and leaving red lipstick on the mouth of a plain mug of chocolate de leche at the cafe whose tables and chairs rise from cobblestone and create a mandala around a stone fountain every evening. I can never find that cafe during the day. Home is also knowing what number to call when I am lying in the street and I can't move my ankle. I don't know that number or if it even exists. I remember again that I am not Mexican. Soy Chicana de Nuevo Mexico, as though there were a Viejo Mexico. Soy de Nepantla. I wonder, is there an ambulance in the in-between space? Care. The paramedic who laughed at my jokes as she stabilized my ankle for the ambulance ride. The nurse at Hospital San Lucas who held my hand while I sobbed as a team wheeled me from ambulance to emergency room. I sobbed because I finally could, because I wasn't lying on the street anymore, because I had been holding my breath, because I didn't want him to leave, because maybe now I could pee and get a painkiller, and maybe my ankle could be made right, because all this could have been so much worse. You're in shock, he said. We're right here. We're going to care for you. The surgeon from Guadalajara with salt and pepper hair who apologized for showing up in gym clothes. He was working out when he got the call. He said he would change into more professional clothes before my surgery. He touched my hand. It's serious, the fracture, and it's common. I've done this surgery many times. You will recover. You will be well. We have to put your ankle back in its socket. This will hurt. Raft, a vessel, a group of ducks. Rain and more rain falls in Albuquerque in the days I convalesce at my friend's house. Flash flood warnings from the National Weather Service. This is a dangerous and life-threatening situation. Do not attempt to travel unless you are fleeing an area subject to flooding or under an evacuation order. There is never enough water until there is too much. I think of burn scars. I think of the stories my ankle scars will tell. Farce. 10 days after fracturing my ankle on a Oaxaca street, 10 days after the handsome surgeon from Guadalajara rotated my ankle back into its socket while I held my friend's hand and groan screamed. 10 days after surgery, after my friend Perla opened her home to me, after she found a walker, and another friend found crutches, and another friend brought me cake, and Henry flew to Oaxaca to bring me home, and 2 men loaded me onto a dolly, strapped me in, and carried me up the stairs to the open door of the airplane. And a friend who'd broken his ankle months earlier dropped off the knee scooter he was no longer using. I broke a bone in my good foot. Fracture does not anagram to 4th of July, where I ride the scooter to the backyard for fireworks. The scooter is not all-terrain. I can still pedal with my left foot. My left foot is still my good foot. A good foot is a non-broken foot, a whole foot, a weight-bearing foot. Curate, you are not Frida Kahlo. Cure, maybe you could learn to skin deer, to pound venison into pemmican. Face fact, some will think you are on vacation. Hey, now that there's a little more spaciousness in your life, I wondered if I could run an idea past you. Where do I put this idea? There is no room on my sickbed. Some will look through you. They will wait for you to heal or not heal, but get better. Are you better? Some will give advice that isn't advice. None of your shoes will fit. The pain gets worse and worse. Nobody understands. Truce, boredom, loneliness. I surrender. Fear. I will fall. I will hurt myself irreparably. I will forget I can't walk. I will be afraid of Oaxaca, of that market and that street that was my favorite street. I will waste this time. True. It turns out we are not strong at the broken places. In studies in which healed bones were subjected to bending and twisting forces, the repaired bones were capable of breaking anywhere, including the fracture site. New York Times, 2010. Also, how does one conduct a study like this? Fe, how little. Trace, the outline of my titanium plate. They say I will set off metal detectors. That's not true. Of what my ankle was, of the Michelle who traveled, of the me who had never broken a bone, I fell and thought, I am different now. This will change me. I kept going, but part of me stayed behind. How you are stuck in the inhale. How a body doesn't process alcohol or caffeine the way it used to. How a period can leave for months. How it returns. How you don't sleep through the night. How you are so careful now. Every step, every word. Future, me. There won't be a gaping hole. There won't be a hand reaching up from that street. No outline where my ankle turned, my body fell. I will take off my shoes. I will inhale. I will find my exhale, and I will keep walking. Grandmother that I wrote about this, who I often refer to as the mean grandma. She had what my friend Carolina Monsiváis describes as a big heart with really sharp edges. And as she was in the hospital, there was one member of our family who was really useful in that situation. My cousin Chris, who's a physician's assistant. It was Chris who understood what all the machines meant. Chris who knew how to talk to the doctors. Chris who finally made the lung specialist level with us and tell us what was happening with my grandmother. To have us face fact, to finally level and say she wasn't going to get better. This person is no longer the person you know, and it's time to let her go. My brothers, who are musicians, and I joked that we weren't of much use during this time. He proudly proclaimed, "The trombonist has arrived. May I play a solo for you?" I proudly proclaimed, "I could write a poem now. Would anyone like a poem?" I did write the obituary and the eulogy, actually. And so this might be a time when we want to be of use. And maybe many of us are in really practical ways. Maybe we are giving money to organizations that help vulnerable people. Maybe we offer rides to folks who can't drive themselves to particular places. Maybe we are visiting people who are afraid of deportation, and we are taking food or medicines or services to them. But I argue that our work as keepers of words, as artists, as people who tell stories is more important now than ever. The writer, like the healer, like the witch, is the person who can create the new culture. And don't we need a new culture right now? So I'd like to read a few poems that have come from this time when I have been asking, but how might I be of use? If I don't play trombone, and I don't have a lot of money to give to organizations, and I'm not a doctor, how might I speak to this moment? What is my role? What is mine to do? Why I write, after Rosemary Catacalos. I write because English was never my grandfather's home address, and inheritance was not letters or land, but a paper cup of sacred dirt and a broken crucifix. I write because a Mexican mother sold homemade popcorn balls from a car trunk cooler after catechism every Tuesday, blue dye the color of faded jeans, and red so sweet it tasted pink. Because every Tuesday I remember you could make money from the back of your car. I write because I don't remember her face or her car, only putting my sweaty quarter in her palm, and only every now and then because of all the sugar, but more because we saved quarters. We saved everything. I write because I still save plastic bags and gift tissues and the fronts of greeting cards. I write because I can't save everything. Because a girl who is caged wishes she could stay with her American family and not the mother who walked her across a continent. I write because a shadow once flew across our courtyard, and minutes later the neighbor boy rang our doorbell and asked, "Have you seen my peacock?" Because a butterfly emerged from its chrysalis and its wing ink still setting dripped ochre on a hollyhock leaf. I write because in Palestine the lemon and olive trees are splinters and old women can't outrun the bombs. The poem wants. The poem wants to drink water from the stream running through the land that hasn't been in the family since the gringos came, but will settle for lead-free pipes and no rotten egg smell. The poem wants to visit a doctor when her bones ache and her head burns, without waiting 3 weeks for an appointment or worrying about what they might find because she might not have the cash, but would settle for another year or two on her parents' health insurance. The poem wants an end to mega drought, dousings to fill the aquifer and flow the Rio Grande, but will settle for one good snow, one good monsoon. The poem wants you to love a woman who isn't and won't be a mother as much as you love a fetus, but will settle for lower rates of sepsis in Texas. The poem wants purple mountains, no majesty or highness, wants amber, turquoise, waves, empathy, black beans, corn tortillas. Maybe the poem just wants too much. Oh, thank you. I believe that even when we're writing in times of dread, we can still write from a place of light and a place of joy. And I believe that what feeds that is gatherings like these. It's finding our people. It's having the friend whose hand you can hold when a doctor has to pop your ankle back in its socket. It's having Frida, a magical, wonderful, real human being, show up and offer help on a street where I didn't know anybody. It's having two guys strap you into a dolly and carry you up the stairs of a plane in Oaxaca because there are no jetways in their tiny airport. So I'm curious what your medicine is. What's the light source that you are feeding on right now, and how will that shape what you write, what you share, the culture that you offer to others, and the community that we are reshaping and remembering at this time? And I want to close by reminding us that we are all Coyolxauhqui. We who defend our home, we who say the hard thing, we who warn, we who won't be taken, we who disagree, who see, who speak the truth. We can put ourselves back together. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Gave us a lot to think about and a lot of metaphor for us. I love the metaphor of the various goddesses, the moon goddess. And it strikes me that, well, we want a wonderful fairy tale. Sometimes the tale is not that way. It involves hard work and pain. So, and this is our gift for you.